okay, so we have to leave Texas to go to Maine for Nancy Drew, which also a very funny episode.
It was funny. Ace was
Legend.
he was on something. That was an Ace episode, and he was so funny. Okay, we'll get into the story, but since I brought it up, when he walks into the restaurant and the host was like, "Do you have a reservation?" And he's like, "I have many, but I'm here anyway."
Yes. Or like when he's on the phone with Karen and he starts like, this is what he wants. He's like, get it, Karen. He's like, he comes back to Drew and he's like, too much.
Yeah. It was like he knew he was succeeding and he was getting more into character on the phone, and then he just like, she'd agreed to it already, but he just had to close with, get that footage, Karen. And I'm like, what a moment.
Oh, what a sweet little baby.
Yes. Oh, one more Ace moment though, in the car when he's like driving him away. And one, I love that he calls him Mr. D, but also that Carson is trying to convince him to go back, and he's like, I can't do that. That's not what's going to be happening. And then he's like, oh, we're going to take you somewhere safe. And he's like, we're on Route 1. Please tell me that you're not taking me back to my house. And he's like, where would you like me to pretend that we're going?
And it was such a departure from when we first saw him in the car, and Carson was like, wait, what? And before he even got the line out, yes, it was like, shut up, and then turned down to the garden like, can't stand the chatty ones.
That was Ace's episode for sure. So great. I had to actually look in to see who that writer is because they were fantastic for this episode. Also, that wasn't the only part that was funny. I mean, he was obviously very funny, but Nancy being annoyed by the connection between Nick and George, I don't know why her name escaped me for a second, Nick and George, was funny. Like, she basically was like, and then when we have 7 minutes left and George is like, what do we do for 7 minutes? And it's like, obviously they want you to lean into the idea that they're going to be kissing. And he goes, I have more ideas about the claw. And she's like, you're very proactive.
Nancy really did kind of flip out there when she found out about the business partnership, but then she cooled down toward the end. I think maybe she was like, okay, I have bigger fish to fry than this right now.
Yeah,
but it spooked her a little bit.
Yeah, that's it. And it was a very interesting journey for her because, of course, there was that first awkward thing about you bought the claw, whatever, and they got over that and they started talking about the mission, and you could almost see the look of like relaxing on George's face because she was like, yes, she changed the subject. But what we always praise Kennedy's acting, and my goodness, there was one moment when they went into the sewers and George made the Jean Valjean reference, and Nick knew to automatically talk about it. There was just this excellent subtle head shake that Kennedy did. Like, if you weren't looking at the camera, you wouldn't see it. But I think that highlighted Nancy's almost like, is insecurity the right word? She was completely caught off guard by this, and like they didn't linger on it, they didn't stick with it. Nancy got on with the mission, but I just thought, I was looking at her in that moment, and she's just like, she knew what was happening, but she was doing anything she could to avoid it, and I just thought that was awesome.
Yes, she's so perceptive. She had already picked up on it. Not to mention they're being very weird, and then because they hop up every time she sees them together, even though they're not doing anything. And she was needlessly standing close to Nick when they were discussing her going off on her own. And how, like, I need you to stay here so you can save me. And I was like, hon, the flowers are on the grave. I'm like, it's done. I need you to get there too, so I can get there too. But I mean, I've seen a steal for episode 13, so I know something. I'll get potentially one more moment, and then we will wrap it up. But this was also an interesting case. Well, two cases, because you have what's going on in the mental hospital, and then you have like solving how to get Carson out of jail so he doesn't get killed by whoever Mr. Hudson hired. But with the case, I would have pieced out of the mental hospital. I'm sorry, all that mold and then like the bugs that were crawling on the wall too. No.
Oh, Nancy, was it worth it? The whole time I was just like yelling at her, like, just go outside, get service, and you'll find out that your dad is out of jail and you probably should be helping with this situation right now. Like, you're so invested in trying to help exonerate him by finding information from Lucy Sable's mom, who she really walked a moral line for me talking to Lucy's mom. And I was like, is it really worth getting that hotel key and then being locked in a supernatural box that's going to kill you, when you could have just like checked your voicemail and seen probably frantic texts from Ace and Bess. Like you could have helped out that and then like maybe circle back to this hospital. But did you guys notice the just look of glee on her face when she was talking to that nurse who ended up being a patient, and he was like, oh, I'll tell you everything, and she was just so excited that somebody was like gonna tell her everything and she didn't have to like beg it out of them.
Yes. She's so cute. Like she's always like, you're gonna give me all of the information? Yes, let's sit down over here. You can just spill everything. I think that this was also a good opportunity, like you said, Reed, for us to see how far she's willing to go to get things. Because even when she's like, I think Lucy's mom has dementia, it's like, you don't think you know she has dementia. She confused you with like 2 people. And then unfortunately, she upset her mom and didn't send anybody over there to go help her. Because obviously the woman is living in a reality in which Lucy's still alive. That's how she's coping. But it was so interesting where she was like, I hid it so they wouldn't have to know. And it's understandable that it's confusing to think that Lucy's mom might have done something to hurt her, but that's not the case. But she seemed like she was kind of protect her from something about her reputation, since she stopped the people from talking about her.
I'm not sure what to make of this.
Yeah, I feel like there were a lot of layers, not just to that one scene, but yes, when it opened and we heard Nancy talking about Lucy's mom, it definitely came across as though, could she have killed her? But then Nancy was like, no, I'm sure the whole my mom would kill me. It was just, she was speaking figuratively. She didn't mean that her mother would actually kill her. But then I think that scene brought a lot into question. We know, I think what we can take away from it is that Lucy's mom wouldn't have killed her. She did care about her. She was, maybe she thought of her daughter as someone who needs to be protected instead of like working with them, and just trying to help her out from afar and doing things for her or whatever, because she knows what she's like. I don't know whether that was what that was implying, but yeah. And then it did. I agree with what Reed said. It brought Nancy into like a morally gray area where like she shattered that woman's bubble of thinking that her daughter was still alive and then just like left her there. It was just Nancy's always walked that line, and I think it'll be a long time before she unlearns how to walk that. But yeah, there was a lot of interesting dynamics in that scene in particular, and I think it left us, as part ones do, it left us with more questions than answers.
She was trying to be careful, and you can tell that she was trying to be as respectful as she could, but she was like, oh, if I could just get this one piece of information and leave this woman alone. But she just like, when she started getting what she wanted, she just kept going, and you could see she was conflicted. But at the same time, I was like, girl, didn't you just talk to Nick last week about being conflicted about what to do morally? And like this situation is, I think, possibly a little bit worse. I don't know. But yeah, she got what she wanted. And I understand why fans were telling us we should watch the next episode and this episode together, because this is, I think, one of the biggest cliffhangers, at least for Nancy's sake. Like we haven't had to wait to see what her fate was, right?
No, we haven't. And we haven't. Especially not in this way where we're trapped in, she's now in her own bubble. Perhaps this is like a not karmic retribution, but like you did this thing to this woman who's suffering from dementia, and you popped her bubble about her daughter being alive, and now you are about to be trapped in what most likely is her happiest scenario. So we only saw her dad, but he mentioned her mom, and I was like, oh, this is gonna hurt, and when she has to like wake up to the reality of her mom not being alive anymore. Yeah. I mean, she's going to, because the bugs were all over that bed covering and the walls, and like, no, we have
the camera covered up the camera.
Oh my God, that was so gross.
Yeah.
Like, and she had just gotten out of the bed too, and I was like, that means that they were already there, but you can't see them. But now I know that they were already there, crawling over you.
Oh, that burst the bubble already.
This storyline and this I don't even know what to call it, but her trapped into this, what they call it, the box.
The whisper box.
Yes, the whisper box. It reminded me of I don't remember what season of Once Upon a Time it was, but there's a season where like they get someone gets trapped somewhere. I don't know if it was Prince Charming or Snow White, and they had to like send someone in to like get them. I shouldn't even brought it up because I don't remember the specifics, but it reminded me of that. And it made me think, like, how are they going to get her out? Because they can't just open the door, right? Like, she's in there.
Yeah, because they put everyone outside of the building. She doesn't see the door left her side. I don't know if she's actually in reality curled up in a ball in the middle of the East Wing and they have to go find her in that library, or if she's literally not on this plane anymore.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting, because when she went in, I was like, don't let go of the door, because I thought it was going to be one of those typical situations where the door slammed shut. That didn't happen.
Even worse.
She just casually pushed the door closed. And I was like, okay. And then she turned around and the door was gone. I was like, oh man. So I don't know whether does that door still exist on the outside, as Sabrina said, or is she on this plane anymore? Of course, her body's still there, her mind's somewhere else, but like, can anyone else get to her body to wake her up?
I mean, they will, because she's still.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have 3 seasons of this to go through. They'll figure it out.
But still, it is a situation that's very harrowing, and it definitely like makes you want to watch the next episode to find out what's going to happen with Nancy, who's going to save her. I do think it's probably going to be a team effort. If there is one lesson she has learned, is that she does need people, because she popped into the claw to say I need help, but she does not ever say that. But she did this time. And I love George's line about, how did you ever have a solo career?
Where is the lie?
No.
And then really should have used the buddy system this time.
Yeah. I feel like the one line that kind of stuck out to me towards the end, and we kind of talked about it already, was when she said to Nick, but if you come with me now, who's going to save me? Who am I going to need to save me in 10 minutes? And was that like a remnants of the relationship? Was that her not moving on? Or was it her just acknowledging that Nick's always the friend that saves her? And is that a tease of what will come in the next episode? If you know what I mean?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's this new transition in their relationship. Like, she goes off on her own, but he tends to save her. But also he's growing closer to George. Not that he wouldn't save her. I think he'd save anybody in their crew. But like the romantic side of that is definitely coming to an end. I also love that like the way that we get to where the card is through him knowing a Bible verse, because it's in the Thin Man's. She's like, it was random. He's like, actually, no, it's this verse. It's and George was like, oh, now he knows it. Now he goes to church every Sunday. It's just nice to like, we're getting little bits of his character as you go along. And then he gets to talk to her about his grandma and how she took him there. And that leads to a lovely discussion about finding his purpose in the claw. And George doesn't even fight it. She says, I guess for co-bosses then. And he's like, co-bosses. I like them. I really like them. They're very communicative, and it's what he needed in his relationship that he was not getting it with Nancy. So I get why people are like, Fanson flags high, we're never going back to Nancy. Nancy's going to slowly make her way to Ace. I think I'll always love Drewson for what it was, but this is a great path for Nick.
I think they needed to be together to learn stuff about themselves. So I don't think that it was a waste of a ship. I just think it was helpful for their characters.
Very much so. It allowed him to, one, get a community through her, and for her to accept that she has a community, and, learn that you cannot keep people on ice until you're ready to get to them. Long live Drewson. Well, their spirit.
Always in our hearts. Can we talk about Bess?
She was great this episode. I don't like Amaya, but Bess was great.
Yeah, I didn't know what to think about that, because Bess was like, I was not understanding what the whole purpose of that was, other than Bess being invested in what's going on with her friends and using her new friend as like a stepping stone, and then also proving her worth as a Marvin. I guess that's the point of it. I think I just explained it to myself.
I think it's going to create some conflict going forward, because we've seen this so many times when someone is fighting to graduate into a different kind of life, a higher class life, and she's done that now, and it wasn't as hard as she thought it was. But now she's going to have to make a choice between, is this who she wants to be versus who she was? Does she want to, which life does she want to live? Does she want to like keep solving murders or stay with the Drew crew and have this lovely, happy relationship with Elizabeth? Or does she want to be challenged in different ways, in ways where she didn't even have confidence in herself and be part of this family? Because I will have to say, as the episodes go on, I think we're seeing the Marvins in a less nice light, because they've invested so much time into Bess forming this relationship with her aunt, and literally the scene had nothing to do with that. It was all about, oh yes, I accept you off the bat, now will you do this for me? And literally it feels like they're going to start using her to open more doors for them, because I don't know whether the Marvins haven't opened doors as far as young people goes, and I think that Bess will be their way to do that. And yes, in this case, she had a great relationship with Umaya, not right out of the gate, but they developed one. And I do think that will lead to a lot of conflict going forward, because is there feelings for Umaya? Will that lead to, between her having to choose between her and Elizabeth? I don't know. I think Bess will have to make a choice at some point.
For sure. And it was weird. Did she lie to Ace about Diana's intentions? Because I could have sworn her grandmother told her that she wanted her to form an alliance with Amaya, and that Marvins don't marry the help, which Elizabeth is actually law enforcement, but she still isn't the match that her grandmother would want. And Bess told Ace that it was only supposed to be a mentor situation. I was like, yeah, your grandmother said that, but she also implied that she wanted the door to open to both families. And the mentor situation isn't as strong as a connection of an alliance as a marriage.
I thought she mentioned something about that to Ace.
Yeah, she did in the beginning when she needs help after she raids Nancy's closet of all closets.
Oh, I want to know if she stole any pieces from Nancy, because I was like, does Nancy have that orange turtleneck? Does she have that, blush pantsuit? Like, what did you take from Nancy? I need to know.
I did too. I was like, this still looks like it's best. So, like, unless like there's a blush pantsuit that Nancy's mom got for her that Nancy just never wore. And Bess was like, yes, this one, the one piece that I can take. But yeah, she told Ace that it's just because he's like, well, how does Elizabeth feel about that? And she's like, oh, she's fine with it because this is just a mentor or mentee situation, that it's not supposed to be a relationship. And I was like, I thought Diana implied that she wanted you to get close to her by any means necessary.
Maybe that's Bess just like trying to not put any mind into that. Maybe that's her lying to herself a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe she's trying to convince herself, because first of all, again, the friendship between her and S is just wonderful, and I feel like she's at her most calm when she's talking to him. It just feels like she's totally herself, and maybe that was a case of by trying to convince him, she was trying to convince herself, because again, that's not how the episode panned out. When she was offered the lift by Amaya at the end, she ignored at least we think ignored the text from Elizabeth. So that's definitely making a first choice, but will it be the final choice?
Questions. This is an interesting story for Bess. I am though confused. She is worried about being able to stay in America, which is understandable. But I was like, if you're a Marvin, haven't they taken care of your dual citizenship? Yes, because I feel like they should have, since your father is an American.
Oh, true. And she's out of favors with Ryan, so
I know.
That could have been a good way to be like, hey, help me out.
Yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting because Reed, weren't you the one who was suspicious about Owen's part in this and bringing her into the Marvins? And if she is a Marvin, how are they not? Well, she didn't explain to them that she's here. Did she tell Owen that she's here undocumented?
I don't know.
So they may not know then. But in any case, she still needs dual citizenship because the visa will expire. So how are they not on that yet? Unless they're letting her believe she's a Marvin when she's not.
Maybe this was the test and they needed Amaya to be like, yeah, she's good.
Maybe. And so then like she's just like, here's your papers. But episode 13 is gonna be very intriguing. And do want to know how they get out of, how Nancy gets out of the Wizard Rocks that apparently is owned by the Thin Man. which is a terrific name. I feel like we're about to watch a horror movie.
Yeah.
I feel like if staying in my Once Upon a Time reference that, you know, is barely a reference, I think someone's gonna have to go in to get her out. So who knows how that's gonna work.
It's gonna
We
be
all just
Nick.
thought of him, yeah.
Oh, yay, scenes potentially. So but yes, it's gonna be an interesting story. One more point before we wrap this. This is like the lone horror on the CW, and they do it so well. It's like very like low grade, but I still get like unsettled. Like when she was walking out of the East Wing and the ball follows her for a minute. I was like, oh no, like just like go back into the East Wing. Like the ball doesn't need to follow her. But like I just think that's so interesting that they do horror elements without it being a very scary show.
It got quite Stranger Things there for a moment, with
I
the
was gonna say that too. It gives me upside down vibes.
yeah, and the fact that she broke the seal, that was the priest had pred shot. She broke the seal by opening the door into the new ward. Broke the seal. The mold was coming through, and then of course she saw the ghosts. And the scene where she was walking back into it, and the wind was all around her, and you could see the cockroaches on the wall. It just definitely, I love the fact the show can, like, one moment you're having a really touching family scene, the next you're having police outside the house telling us to bring us hostage out, and then the next you have Nancy entering a supernatural dimension. It does it all so well. It weaves in between all of these genres really well, and I agree. Every time I watch the show, and it's like 3/4 through the way through, it's a nice family moment, and then suddenly the supernatural comes out of nowhere. You're like, hold on a minute, what did I sign up for? And you never know how far it's going to go. It never goes too far, but I love that it makes you think, well, that's very, very an expert use of the genre, and I love that about it.
Yes. Season 4 cannot get here fast enough. I mean, we needed to slow down a little bit because we have to finish and be caught up, but like I do understand why the fans are upset that it's not in the fall lineup.
Yeah. I mean, we have 13 episodes, 12 episodes to rename it. We're already like, yes, Nancy Drew Wright deserves to be there.
Well, I mean, it's in our fall lineup.
That's true.